So, time then for the press preview. It's our first chance to see tomorrow's papers. And tonight, we'll be having a look at the headlines with the senior associate editor at the New Statesman, Rachel Cunliffe, and the political editor at The Sun, Harry Cole. Great to see you this Bank Holiday Monday. Thanks for joining us this evening. We'll chat in a moment after we've had a look at those headlines for you, starting with the Metro, leading with the first official picture of the King after his coronation and his message to his people. Thank you, each and every one. Here's tomorrow's Daily Express with the same picture and almost identical headline. The Times as well has that picture and quote from the King, while the Mail says Charles had a bust-up with Boris Johnson over government plans to ship asylum seekers to Rwanda while he was still Prince of Wales. The Telegraph also pictures the King, but leads with a plea from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for people not to go to their GP with common ailments and go to their local pharmacy instead to ease pressure on doctors. The Eye reports that MPs have called on the major high street banks to pass on the recent rises in interest rates to savers and not just borrowers. It comes with another rate rise expected this week from the Bank of England. While the FT reveals that dividend payouts from the country's big water companies have doubled in the last year, despite the controversy over rising household bills and criticism about discharging raw sewage into our waterways. And staying with the subject of household bills, the Mirror reports that millions of families missed at least one bills payment last month in the face of what it calls unrelenting high prices. While the Star carries words of warning from what it calls a former cyber boffin about the dangers to society posed by artificial intelligence. Don't forget, you can scan the QR code that you see on screen during the press preview. Check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us discussing them. And Rachel and Harry are here to do just that. Let's start, shall we, with the coronation, given that things have ended today in terms of the celebrations. Rachel, the front of the Daily Express, carrying this official photograph of King Charles, many of the front pages, of course, carrying it as well. We thank each and every one of you, he wrote in an open letter to the nation. Rachel, it's a pretty striking image, isn't it? What have been your thoughts of this weekend?
Oh my goodness. Well, today the focus has very much been on the volunteering effort, and I think that's a really lovely touch. We were not sure when we knew there was going to be a coronation, there's going to be a bank holiday, if there's going to be an extra one. Obviously, we got one for the Queen's funeral, and to have that bank holiday and to say it's a chance for people to give back to their local communities, to volunteer. And look, here's the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children doing just that at a local scout centre. I think that's really lovely, and that's a sort of sign of how you can update some of the trappings of monarchy and some of the old traditions to fit our modern age. I have to say, I'm not a massive fan of the official portrait. I know it's on all the photos. Maybe I'll get used to it. I just feel that there were more striking ones of the ceremony itself, kind of the people, the grandeur of the abbey, and you got a sense of the process, and actually it was the process and all the different people being involved in that ceremony that I personally found really powerful. Looking at that, it looks a little bit like someone dressing up to me, but maybe I'll get used to it. I don't know.
Well, I suppose it is somebody dressing up, isn't it, to a certain extent. I'll probably be sent to the Tower, Harry, for saying that. But what do you like the photo?
I think what struck me about that photo is quite what a stark contrast it is to the official portrait of Elizabeth all those years ago, wearing exactly the same get-up, same crown, continuity, orb, the works. But that image of Elizabeth is so striking because she's so young. It's a sort of almost like a sort of post-war era hopefulness of this young, beautiful queen. And I don't know, offense to His Majesty, he's not as young. He is, the oldest crowned monarch in history, and it really does show in that picture. So it's different. So it'll take some getting used to. But I think we've been slightly spoilt with imagery over the last 96 hours. So I'm probably being just a little bit fussy and pernickety now. Just the scale and colours of that ceremony at the weekend. I've only ever really seen it in black and white or very grainy 1950s photographs. I think what I was unable to escape was just how much gold there is. And a sort of pre-social media age, pre-television age, you can imagine that ceremony and that parade through London being pretty, striking and fantastic in a completely different way. Whereas now I think we slightly take it all for granted, and it risks perhaps some of it looking a little bit silly because I think we've been so sort of, we've been almost spoilt by it.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And something that was a cloud over the day were these arrests and the fallout from them. Just looking in the Metro, their headline, Coronation arrest tactics backed by the PM after backlash. Rachel, the Met Police today saying that they've expressed regret at some of those arrests, those 6 arrests by members of Republic who have been let go without any further issue. Their bail conditions have all been dropped. But the Prime Minister's standing by the police. What would you make of that?
Well, I don't think he really has a choice. I think it's very, very unfortunate. When the public order bill was being debated, lots of people, myself included, pointed out that it handed new powers to the police, including the power to arrest people before they disrupted anything, just if the police thought they might be disruptive, or if they found items on them that were hugely broad, hugely vague in specification that could be used for things like lock-ons. Well, that's exactly what happened here. The police arrested these individuals because they had devices of them that the police at the time said, oh, they could use that to lock on, to cause disruption. No, they were for the placards. But the law is drafted so broadly that they were able to do that. I don't buy the Met regret either, because before the coronation, they did a very long Twitter thread where they said tolerance would be low, which I think is very sinister in a democratic country, to have the police going, we're not going to be tolerant of your peaceful protest. There were all kinds of other mishaps as well, missteps, arresting a journalist who had a press card who was covering a protest. Well, that's not in the law, and the Met Police should have known that. Arresting volunteers of Westminster Council who were handing out rape alarms to vulnerable women as part of a scheme that is actually endorsed by the Home Office. That's also not a good look for them either, especially after the year that they've had. And I just feel, as somebody who does believe in the monarchy and does think that it works for us and works for our country, it's not a good look when you have people criticizing an unelected head of state to then be arrested for expressing that view. The point of living in a democratic country is that peaceful protest is allowed. The Met clearly erred on the side of any disruption is too disruption for us. No, thank you. We'll arrest you and ask questions later. Clearly, they made a mistake, and I think we should be a little bit concerned by that.
Harry?
Yeah, I mean, I think this needs to be seen in a little bit of context. The threats from the likes of Just Stop Oil and associated sort of climate groups who had been openly threatening to disrupt the process of the procession on Saturday. You've then got to look at the balance of these things, in that, there are 11,000 police officers, there are millions of people in London. The vast majority of the public support police taking tougher action on protesters. But, on the whole, the Met had done a very, very good job, and that's why I think the PM was in a bit of a tricky position today, because he was had to say and praise it. They then come out at 9 o'clock at night on a bank holiday and said, yeah, we did get it wrong on these 6 protesters. It feels to me like that. I mean, they're not. That's going to dominate the debate and the discussion. It feels like, once again, the Met it's one step forward, 2 steps back with them at the moment, and it doesn't really seem to be able to sort of catch a break in terms of it. They deservedly had a thorough and utter kicking, and continue to get that throughout this year about their handling of some of their officers. But there's a new management in charge, and yet again, they're never far from the headlines. And there's a growing number of people within government, within sort of policing, who do think the Met is too big, it's too worldly. It is, is it really fit for purpose? And all this is going to do is add weight to that argument. But perhaps the time has come to break up that police force, because should they be trying to do everything, be that these vast scale events like this, anti-terrorism, normal day-to-day crime, maybe it's time to split it up.
Okay. Well, as the papers are reminding us, the fun and festivities of the weekend have come to an end, and it's back to earth with a bump. Cost of living, of course, rising bills. Front of the FT, Rachel, water company dividends double to £1.4 billion.
This is such an important story, and I think should be on the front pages of all of the newspaper. You know, all that raw sewage that's being dumped in our rivers and our seas, and all the water companies going, oh, there's nothing we can do, the infrastructure is crumbling. Well, somehow they're paying out dividends worth billions, it's all masked by some sort of Byzantine, very complicated system, because are they internal dividends that they don't have to declare? Are they external dividends going to shareholders? It's all very murky. Ofwat are looking into it. There's a line in that FT story that says that by 2025, Ofwat will have the power to question and indeed block dividends if they don't think the companies should be paying them out. Why 2025? What has been going on? The water companies 30 years ago, when they were privatised, didn't have any debt. Now they have debts of hundreds of millions. They're spending the same amount on infrastructure and investment repair as they did then. So the investment hasn't gone into our infrastructure and our water systems. Bills are going up. We've got raw sewage being dumped in the sea, and yet all this money is going somewhere. Where is it going? Nobody knows.
And the front of the Mirror on a similar theme, really, just how difficult life is for so many people, while some of these companies are making a lot of money. High prices are unrelenting, with 2 million people missing at least one bill last month.
I mean, it feels a bit of a sort of Coronation hangover, you know, back to work tomorrow for the rest of the country and back to the realities of the world. And don't forget, it was only last Thursday that the government took a hefty kicking at the ballot boxes. We haven't really had the proper fallout from that yet, because obviously the count went late into Friday and then everyone went into coronation fever. So MPs returning back to the Commons tomorrow, I suspect, will have fairly heaving in trays on this sort of things. The Lib Dems made a big issue of water companies and sewage and rivers in their local election campaigns, which saw them make headway in some very affluent parts of the country. And the cost of living crisis poll we did last week for The Sun, you know, continues to be, soaring prices and inflation continue to be the number one issue for voters. That's not going to go away anytime soon. And inflation does seem to be sticky. You know, the Bank of England and the OBR and whatnot and other three-letter types have all made these vast predictions that it's going to be down to single digits soon and down to even back to 2% by the end of next year. It doesn't feel like that at the moment. And the next round of inflation numbers, you know, if they continue to be above 10%, I think, you know, this political headache for the government is not going to be fixed in any way.
Yeah, we're talking more about that after the break. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up in a couple of minutes, the Eye says MPs have called on banks to pass on the recent rises in interest rates to savers and not just borrowers. Discussing that shortly. Welcome back to the press preview, where Rachel and Harry are still with us. Front page of the Eye, Harry. Banks are being told that they're cashing in and taking advantage of savers, according to one Treasury Committee member talking to the Eye. Banks being asked to pass on higher interest rates.
Yeah, I think we'd put this one down in a sort of more in hope than optimism folder. Obviously, interest rates look set to go, as we were just discussing before the break, with inflation remaining stubbornly high, pressure on the bank to keep rates high. And really, the economy, you know, is shaping up to be the defining issue of the next election. It kind of always is, but perhaps sometimes to a lesser extent than in other fights. And it feels like there's a sort of scrambling round in government. There's a lot of anger aimed at Andrew Bailey and the bank for how they've handled the last 18 months and that inflation target of 2.5, which seems like a pipe dream now. And this sort of strikes me a little bit as yet another sort of, you know, desperate attempt to try and, you know, ease the pain, but one I'm not sure is going to be that successful.
Yeah, it's an interesting statistic, Rachel, in the Eye. In October 2008, when the base rate was last at 4.5%, the best flexible accounts paid 6.6%. The best saving rates today, 3.7%.
It's always interesting when interest rates go up, the time it takes for mortgage rates or for loan interest rates to increase is a nanosecond. The time it takes for interest rates on savers accounts to rise is weeks, months, possibly years. And it was the same with petrol. It was the same when fuel duty was cut. And did that saving make it to the motorist at the petrol pump? Somehow it didn't. It's the same with food inflation. Wholesale food prices are coming down at the moment. You won't see it at the supermarket. Those prices are staying stubbornly high. So I think there are lots of areas of our economy where those prices are not getting through to consumers in a positive way, and all of the risk, all of the pain is being taken by individuals while businesses manage to protect their profit margins.
OK, front of the Telegraph, Harry, that picture again of the King, but the story, the main story there is all about ending this 8 a.m. GP phone call lottery, and they're going with the angle that patients are going to be able to get prescriptions from pharmacies without seeing a doctor first.
Yeah, so day two of Sunak's sort of health blitz. So as we were saying, coronation's over. Now back to the five pledges, which I hope you're not going to ask me to name what they are because I can't remember them. But one of them is getting hospital waiting lists down. And part of that in tomorrow is a big announcement from the PM. He's actually written for the Sun tomorrow all about this. Is that for a host of things like earache, coughs and sneezes, blood tests, getting the contraceptive pill, you're not going to have to see a GP anymore. You're going to be able to do it at a high street chemist. Now, this kind of, it's quite a European model. Like it's kind of baffling that lots of these things are antibiotics that you need for an earache. You'd need to go and see a doctor anyway. About boosting pharmacists and government's expectations is that means that they could save around 2 million GP appointments every year to free up that sort of backlog in GPs, which will hopefully then trickle down into to easing some of the pressure on A&Es and hospitals and get the system moving, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Rachel, your thoughts on these reforms to ease GPs' pressures?
Well, anything that we can do to ease the pressures with GPs or A&E, I think we should seriously look into. The idea of pharmacists prescribing antibiotics comes up every couple of months, it seems, and has done for very many years. And the argument against that is that antibiotic resistance is a massive threat to modern healthcare as we know it, and it's something that we should be very, very careful about. The other issue is that a lot of the time people who are going to see their GP have issues that are not necessarily health related, but are to do with the lack of community support, sort of the elderly, our social care crisis. There are all kinds of interlocking issues there. It's not quite as simple as just have somebody else give you the medicine that you need. But I do think if we're going to solve this crisis, we need to be looking holistically at all aspects of our healthcare system. And obviously, pharmacies are a key part of that. It's slightly challenging that there are now fewer pharmacies and a lot of them are shutting down. And so even the part of the healthcare system that this pressure is meant to be eased by passing people onto, that looks like it could be facing serious challenges as well, sadly.
Yeah, the Association of Independent Multiple Pharmacists saying a funding shortfall of £1.1 billion has left many chemists severely struggling with cash flow problems. And let's finish off with a story that appears in the paper almost daily now, doesn't it, Harry? AI and people's concerns about AI and where it's all going and how fast things are moving. On the front of the Daily Star, they take a fairly jokey angle with it, but it is a serious issue.
Yeah, I think this is, I can't see the tiny print on there, but I'm guessing this is Kieran Martin, the former boss of a GCHQ-backed cybersecurity centre, who was out and about on the radio at the weekend, just calling time for this. When the godfather of AI, the person who's sort of one of the most biggest pioneers in all this, has sort of had a sort of Manhattan Project approach to it and said if they had their time again, would they have done it? Perhaps not. You've got Elon Musk saying things need to calm down. There was a think tank last week, I think it was Onward, that said Britain is being left behind in the AI race. So it is exploded with ChatGPT's sort of arrival. It's exploded into a debate. It is a massively important debate to be had. And even if the Daily Star have obviously taken the Daily Star attitude to it, it's better to be having it in some form than none at all. I have to say, the one thing that AI has so far not been able to do is write newspaper headlines. We tried to get one of the programs to recreate famous Sun stories as their headlines, and they were disastrous. So
It won't be long,
newspapers
Harry.
just-
It won't be
just
long.
yet.
It's round the corner. Rachel, one very quick thought, 10 seconds.
There are some guys who've written an app that will talk to women on dating sites using a chatbot without telling them that's what they're talking to. They think that's going to make dating better. And for the women who are talking to this chatbot, rather than the men who are using it to try and date women, maybe it will.
Oh, crikey. OK, well, listen, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck in the week ahead, and we'll speak again soon. We're going to finish with a quick look at the weather.